Finally today, carbon credits have become a bit of a buzz term here in the agriculture industry when discussing ways to combat the changing climate. The credits can be a new source of revenue for agricultural producers. However, this is still a fairly new concept, and at the moment, the marketplace for carbon credits is a bit like the Wild West. Market Journal's Mike Straub recently caught up with Agoro Carbon Alliance's Keith Byerly at this year's Nebraska Ag Expo to get a better understanding of how carbon credits can benefit producers and the land that they steward.
Regardless of the practices used, carbon credits can be beneficial whether you're a farmer or a rancher.
Carbon credits really don't differ for farmers and ranchers. How they're generated, the practices that they utilize to do them are going to be a little bit different just because of the different nature of farming versus ranching, but there's also a lot of overlap there as well. Grazing crop residue or grazing cover crops on crop ground is a qualifying practice that helps growers generate carbon credits. That's going to be that cross transition between the two, but for farmers, it comes down to tillage and cover crops, and for ranchers, it comes down to species diversity, forage utilization, and rotation.
One of the biggest challenges in the carbon credit market today is the idea of additionality.
One of the biggest challenges in the carbon credit market to date has been this idea of additionality, and additionality is what drives the value of these carbon credits. There are different types of carbon that can be generated based off of what's done, just like a grade through a C grade, if you will. And the growers today are wanting the most value is in those A grades, which comes from new practices. So growers that have traditionally been no-tilling for 15, 25 years, things like that, might feel like they're left out of this first generation of ag carbon markets, and they have been to a degree, but with utilization of livestock and things like that, again, grazing on that ground, they can be included in what that is. So it definitely is a factor where a lot of times growers might feel like they're already doing the qualifying practices, but when we stack practice upon practice to continue to escalate the value of the carbon and the value of the soil health to the grower, we can qualify almost any grower regardless of what historical practices they put in place.
Ag carbon is so new, some are even calling it the Wild West of agriculture. And there is some mistrust with the industry. However, with new adaptations and rapid changes, ag carbon is becoming more clear to growers.
Ag carbon is so new, and there's been so many players in it in recent history that a lot of growers, a lot of ranchers use that term quite often, the Wild West of agriculture. And to a degree, you can certainly understand there's a flood of information that's coming at these growers today, and they don't necessarily always know who it's coming from or where it's coming from. So that inherently has tended to build a little bit of mistrust in this industry, just like anything that's new, whether it's technology or farming practices or whatever. But you can also see that as quickly as this has evolved with with new adaptations to how we look at tillage management, how we incorporate livestock into operations and things like that, it's changing so rapidly that just like the days of the Wild West were kind of numbered at one point in time and it was becoming tamer by the day, that's exactly what's happening to ag carbon at this time as well. It's getting tamer by the day, and more clarity and more definition of the players and what they want and what they need, and less confusion all the time.
Continuing to learn new processes and practices will drive yields in either grain or grasses.
So none of these are going to really hinder your production output in the long term, but just like when we adopt anything new onto the farm, there's always a learning curve that's involved in it. I mean, several growers that have tried cover crops over the last 10 or 15 years have found that they had a yield reduction when they tried them, and as they got better at it, they got practice with it. It's just like learning to shoot three-pointers. It doesn't happen in day number one. You've got to grind it out, you've got to learn the process, the practices, and get better at it. And once you get better at it, it in fact escalates yield, because what we've done is we provided more water and nitrogen to any system through organic matter production, and those are going to drive yield, whether it's grass yield or grain yield.
The benefits of carbon sequestration go beyond the payment growers receive. Soil health benefits are the real value for the overall operation.
The biggest benefits aren't the payments that they receive for the carbon sequestration. The biggest benefits are the soil health value that they get out of this. The increase in organic matter helps them hold more water. It helps them have better water holding capacity. So when we get these higher intensity rainfall events that come through, less of it's going to go down the creek, more of it's going to go down into the ground and be there. Aggregate stability, all of these terms that we've become more and more familiar with in the last few years around soil health, those are the things that are the real value to an operation. Because while this might be a longer term contract than most growers are used to traditionally in agriculture, the benefits of this are generational. That building that soil health, building organic matter over time is going to be something that their children and grandchildren get an advantage from. And these carbon payments are going to be some capital that help purchase better tools for the operation, whether that's planter technology to go into no-till, whether that's adding fencing and watering into grazing and livestock ground. Those are the kind of things that enable it, but it's really what we're enabling through soil health that brings value.
If carbon sequestration is something you've been looking into, trying new practices and adaptations could benefit your land's soil for generations to come. Reporting for Market Journal, I'm Mike Straub.